Hello, everyone. So, first of all, thank you very much for coming here, for signing up for the webinar. I would like to welcome you all warmly. So, this webinar is organized by Impact Center of Competence, and it's supported by the Open Preservation Foundation, because we are currently using OPF technical platform for webinars. My name is Tomasz Parkoła, as already mentioned by Becky, and I'm in the center, I'm the scientific and technological director, and I also lead research and development group in this Impact Center of Competence. So this group initiated a series of webinars on digitization workflows at Impact member institutions, and our webinar today is the first one in this series. So today our speakers are Rosica Atanasova and Hugh Brown from British Library. They will talk about digitization at the British Library. So, Rosica, please go on with your presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rosica Atanasova from the British Library. I will start off the presentation by giving you a kind of high-level overview of our digitization approach and some of the processes involved. And my colleague Hugh Brown will talk more specifically about examples of our public-private partnerships at the end of the presentation. I hope everyone can hear me. Yes, the library has been involved in digitization for over 30 years now, going back to 1993. So you can see some of the key digitization milestones, and I haven't been able to cover everything here. We started digitizing for preservation reasons and also to enhance access to the collection and digitally reunite items and collections held by the library and by other institutions around the world. We started with a lot of experimentation, addressing a lot of infrastructure issues, testing equipment. For instance, I was told that the library tested the first Kodak SLR camera on site. We started selecting treasures, British Library treasures, iconic items in our collection for digitization, the so-called boutique digitization, where we provided curated content and interactive features to access the digitized items. So we we used the software called Turning the Pages, and we have over 32 partially digital virtual books available on our website. We also participated in the only national digitization initiative to image highlights from collections of institutions in the UK, the so-called Collecting Initiative. That was around the beginning of the millennium, the new millennium, and this showcased innovative platforms at the time, such as virtual exhibitions and themed tours. And of course, we entered the world of mass digitization, with starting with a very fragile but high-use collections such as newspapers, and then developing our partnership model to work with technical partners, commercial publishers, and other culture heritage institutions. The library has got vast collections covering different formats, periods, languages, a lot of unique and rare content relevant to cultures across the world. So we've had to prioritize to some extent and find funding for the digitization projects, as the funding is mostly external. We have delivered digitization through projects rather than doing it as business as usual. However, now we are developing our infrastructure and workflows to move to a more kind of standardized generic process, which would suit the needs of our internal digitization and also our partnership with others. And this is in progress, work in progress, and is being developed iteratively, and we're constantly striving to improve processes. One other initiative that we currently have at the library is the so-called Endangered Archives program, where we digitized collections, endangered archives around the world. The physical archives remain in the country to which they belong, but we receive the copies of the digital master, and we preserve that and give access to it on our site. We've administered grants and thus digitized over 5 million images through the Endangered Archives program. So this was just a very brief overview of what we've done so far, and I'm highlighting here some of our current major initiatives. I won't be able to go into detail on these in the time I've got, but if you could follow the links after the presentation, you will see that we're currently digitizing printed books in many languages, including South Asian languages. We're digitizing completely our collection of over 10,000 Hebrew manuscripts. And our latest initiative is to work together with the Bibliothèque Nationale de France to digitize 800 pre-1200 illuminated manuscripts from our collections. We have also continue our partnership with the Qatar Foundation to digitize archive materials at the library relating to Gulf history and Arabic science, and we will make available over 2 million images through this partnership program. And we're digitizing not only image-based collections and text-based collections, but we're digitizing our sound recordings, of which we've got over 6 million. And we've launched recently a Save Our Sounds program to help us preserve the nation's sound collection and also build the infrastructure to collect digital sound. From next year, we are going to deliver Heritage Made Digital program, and currently this is in scoping, which will use internal funding, or what we call grant in aid funding that we receive from the government for business as usual activities, to invest into digitizing some of our more vulnerable collections and collections which are of cultural significance, to make sure that our digitization offering is scaled up and it's more comprehensive and representative. So more details on the Heritage Made Digital program in due course. The next couple of slides are just illustrating our internal governance process. We've got a defined process to select content for digitization, plan and approve, and guidelines for staff and partners. This is guidance that we make available internally on our wiki or share with partners. It's constantly under review. The project digitization project outline documentation acts as a kind of a checklist or a job sheet for the project, and helps us to develop the requirements for this to support the generic workflow and process for digitization at the library, and to develop more kind of content format type approach. For instance, unpublished versus published content, or manuscripts versus printed text, so that we are aware of the differences in the production and can streamline and make the process more automated, more efficient. So this is just a brief summary of our technical standards. These are kind of standard guidelines constantly under review to take into account developments outside the library in imaging and metadata standards, technology, and also to address business needs at the library, including kind of access formats, storage costs, systems requirements. For instance, we are developing our knowledge expertise of JPEG 2000 formats, which are currently needed for providing access to our digitized content, and we're looking at gradually moving to JPEG 2000 as both an archival and access master for our collections. And as you can see, I've highlighted other standards such as the ALTO for the text extraction, the OCR, METS for the metadata encoding and transmission, FFF, which I'll come back to in a minute, and the Open Digital Rights Language for specifying rights. So the next 5 slides just illustrate very briefly, in a nice way, the standard kind of digitization workflow. This was particularly developed and is used for the Qatar partnership project, and some of the activities covered here are specific to that project, such as the translation into Arabic. As you all know, selection and scoping is a very important part of digitization projects. That the workflows will of course depend on data quality, both of the quality of the original in terms of conservation needs, how much you can see on a page, as well as the availability of the descriptive metadata. So as part of digitization projects, we fund cataloging, conservation. We try to add value to the digital asset and to the metadata for the collection, for the physical collection as a whole. We fund digital curation as part of digitization projects to maximize the reuse and engagement with the digital asset. So you can see here the process, cataloging, imaging. Quality assurance is obviously a major part of the workflow. At the moment, this is a manual process, and projects do this either by sampling content or up to 100% manual inspection of the images. We're trying to automate the process, as we're developing our workflows, we're looking at different ways of doing that to drive costs down and to make sure that the quality of the data is consistently good. We, as I said, translation here only refers specifically to the Qatar Digitization Partnership. We produce what we call submission information packages, which include images and metadata for the digital objects, including the text extraction, if there is any OCR, which we use for delivering online presentation. So this was just a very, very brief kind of visual illustration of the digitization workflows, which apply to all our projects at the library. We've got internal imaging specialists at the library. We've got our own imaging department, which works on both internal planned projects and offers also on-demand imaging and images for commercial orders for some of our customers, such as publishers. The pricing model varies for internally planned projects. This could be simply cost recovery or cost recovery plus overheads, depending on the funding grant, and as part of the commercial imaging services that the department offers, they also make profit and generate revenue, which goes into funding the service. They work closely with our conservator team to identify problems and issues in advance and improve the workflow, exclude unsuitable items or select equipment for digitization. We use a wide range of high quality equipment, from scanners to what we call hybrid devices, such as an X71 camera provided by Book2Net, to digital cameras. These are typically phase 1 cameras with digital backs using Capture One software, though we select carefully the equipment to match the needs of the collection items. We deliver non-destructive digitization, so it's very important that the scanning of image capture process suits the condition of the items, the binding structure, and so on. Imaging follows the internal technical standards and, of course, considers specific requirements for projects and depending on whether the asset is created for preservation or web delivering. The services offered by our imaging technicians include file generation, quality control, also some post-processing activities such as image stitching. We're currently experimenting with 3D imaging using Agisoft software to generate the 3D models. And of course, text extraction, creation of OCR. We are trying to build our capability for post-processing, especially layout recognition, text extraction within the library. As part of this digital collections management program, capability development, which is in progress, we are looking, as I said, at the digitization workflows, and we want to standardize them, as I said, to bring together the different models we deliver digitization, both internally through partnerships, the different types of contents and operational needs for that. We are constantly improving our processes through consultation and monthly meetings of the so-called digitized content workflow advisory group, bringing together people in the business involved with digitization. We are currently tendering for a workflow orchestration tool to help us manage the digitization schedule, organize, coordinate, extract management information, and of course build the tools and infrastructure to support digitization and to allow us to scale up or down. So we are building at the moment a submission information package generation tool, and I've included here a very kind of high-level illustration of some of our ingest process, and the generation of unique IDs, so-called arcs for the metadata and the digital objects, the distribution of the metadata in our strategic catalogs, Aleph, and an internal system we call IAMS, which is for cataloging archives and manuscripts, and another metadata, which typically is obviously the rights information, preservation, and technical information and structure metadata. So we are currently testing the new tools and finalizing improvements to the infrastructure, and there will be an iterative maintenance and development of systems and tools to help us improve our processes. So in terms of where we provide access to our digitized content, we've recently launched a new platform, new viewer for digitized item in the British Library. As you can see, this blog post, which you could consult later, I've included the link, advertising the viewer for the strategic viewer for British Library collections. This is aiming to replace over 20 legacy browsers viewers for digitized collections at the library. And we were helped in developing this viewer by a company called Digirati. So we run a project called the Universal Viewer Project as an open source project, and we were building on what was developed by the Wellcome Trust, and this platform, this viewer is a IIIF compliant viewer and allows cultural heritage institutions to present their digital artifacts in a more interactive way, and it's also highly customizable, offering highly customizable user interface. I've got a slide coming up with showing the main features on the viewer, but you can follow some of the links later to read more about the universal viewer. So as I said, this replaces other platforms where the British Library is making available digitized content. Currently, over the next 2 to 3 years, we will be migrating gradually content to this new viewer. We will be also iteratively developing the viewer in collaboration with other institutions and others in the community, including service providers. The viewer offers OpenSeaDragon image zooming using a IIIF image API, and IIIF stands for the International Image Interoperability Framework. It's allowing YouTube-style embedding with deep links to specific pages or Zoom regions. It's highly configurable and also will support 3D images, but also audio-visual content, so audio, video, and viewing PDFs. And here's just an example of a collection item from the, I think the collection we digitized as part of the Europeana 1914-18 initiative. We clearly, as you can see, there's to the right of the screen, there is metadata describing the source and the digital object, user terms. You can see all the functionalities in terms of download, embedding, the link into other websites or blogs, and also delivers the IIIF manifest, which allows other IIIF compliant viewers to display the content in their own browser. As you can see, there's the thumbnails for browsing and a zoom option. And okay, so final part of my bit of the presentation. On the 7th of November, the library launched a beta data service for to allow users of the digital collections to download data sets that we've created and for which we've got clear user terms, including open licenses. We, as the library, we have, in terms of digitization, we have evolved in our thinking. Digitization for us is no longer the end, but it's rather the beginning. It allows us of a process. It allows us to deliver users, researchers, artists, anyone really who's interested in digital collections, a digital asset which they can use in many different ways. And we want to support that and make it sustainable and deliver an asset which would suit many different purposes, and it is in a standard, in a format that people can work with. We've made available these data sets, and we've received very good feedback so far, but we are asking for people to download, try working with the data, and give us their feedback so that we can develop the service. The next step would obviously be to develop an API and allow and add more data sets to this service. The team behind the engagement with digital collections, supporting people in the library and users outside the library to work with them creatively or for research, is the digital scholarship team, and myself and Hugh are also members of the digital scholarship team. As mentioned on the slides, our strategy is to enable the production, use, and integration of digital content, services, tools to facilitate scholarship and research and creative reuse. The team was set up in 2010 as part of a new focus on the changing landscape and the use of digital, and digital collections allow research areas to be investigated in new ways through computational methods of research, using new tools, and leads to new discoveries, and it helps us also enrich our collection. So one of the aims of the team is to engage with users, find out how they have use the collection, what kind of metadata they have created, what kind of discoveries they have made, and try to bring back any and enhance the collections at the library to help us with managing them better and increase our understanding of the digital assets we've created. We run events, competitions and awards, especially over the last 4 years as part of an externally funded initiative through the Andrew Mellon Foundation called BL Labs. Just to mention that the Andrew Mellon Foundation has just funded, given us more funding to develop the universal viewer to deliver audio content, which would support our Save Our Sounds program. And I believe there is a job vacancy advertised on the British Library website for a role to play in this project. So if you're interested, you may want to look it up. People in the team are supporting directly digitization projects as digital curators. They help create the digital assets, promote, test new tools, promote and support others to work with them. And here to highlight one of the new current projects at the library, the 2 Centuries of India print project, which is currently digitizing collections in Bengali languages, but looking also digitizing collections in many other South Asian languages, is looking at developing OCR for those languages, promoting data sets for analysis and for the community of researchers and suppliers to help us develop an OCR solution for this language. It also helps others understand it helps us understand how to support digital humanities and digital research using these digital collections to stimulate new digital research, for example, in book history, text mine the content. And it's also delivering training workshops as we speak in Indian institutions, partners to this project. And just a very briefly, a good example of the digital research initiatives at the library supported by the digital scholarship team and BL Labs is this project, the Political Meetings Mapper, and I've included a link to the case study. But basically, the researcher Katerina Navikas, a historian based in the UK, was one of the BL Labs competition winners. She wanted to find meetings of the Chartists who were campaigning for the vote of all men in 19th century Britain. She used OCR from historic digitized newspapers, in particular one digitized newspaper called the Northern Star, as well as digitized and georeference maps to extract with code and geocode and parse places and dates of meetings for the Chartists. So within a very short period of time, she discovered 462 towns and villages across the UK and 5,519 meetings. And as she said, within minutes with a Python code, she was able to do something that she otherwise wouldn't have been able to do or would have done over several years. So we are continuing to support many different initiatives, both on-site and remotely, and currently looking at developing roles within the team as business as usual to engage with users, to run competitions. One particular good example of that is my colleague Stella Wisdom, digital curator, who is working to develop apps and video games using our digital collections, working closely with university students and the gaming community. And the final slide from me is to introduce the presentation from Hugh around partnerships. as I mentioned, we're going through change in terms of organizationally and in terms of our processes for digitization. And we are currently reviewing our strategy for partnerships to make sure that we bring together the different types of public-private partnerships, us working with commercial partners, open access partnerships, and the hybrid models within which fall Google Books and form of projects we've delivered with Microsoft Books and using services from Amazon. So that's from me. I'll now pass on to Hugh to deliver his part of the presentation.
Okay, right. One of the things the library has done for a while was it decided a long time ago that it needed to kind of work with commercial partners to deliver mass digitalisation within the library. Obviously, we had lots of experience of working with partners on specific projects, but what we wanted to do was to develop a kind of a strategy to make sure that we benefited from these strategic partners over a long period of time. And there's also many advantages to doing that. Main one was from our point of view is because we knew that doing that digitalisation with the library in terms of large-scale projects, we didn't really have the internal resources to do. We knew that we would need to get external funding to try and do this, and obviously working with commercial partners does offer that opportunity. The main reason for doing it initially was essentially to create the digital asset for the library. So our agreements generally tend to be that the partners would digitise the content, they would bring in their vendors to do the work, we would provide them with a space within the library to do that work. Once they've digitised it, it would then be made available exclusively for a fixed period of time, the duration of a contract. And while that was running, we would have a specific free access within the library. And also the advantage of doing that also allowed us to get our content made more available online. It also delivers as a revenue stream, so any money we've generated by providing the content with our partners, and obviously the money they will then make to their audiences, we would obviously get a share of that, and that would get, if you like, reinvested back into the library. One of the advantages we also have is it's what I call enabling work. So sometimes they come to us and say, right, we'd like to digitise this particular collection. We would then realise that the collection they're interested in would need either some additional work. It might be that there's parts of which needed cataloguing, and they would pay for the cataloguing, or there would some conservation work would need to be done to make the items or material available for digitisation. I suppose I should say, in terms of conservation, I just mean conservation to enable digitalisation as opposed to the library's view of conservation, which would be like would be about conserving the item as effectively as you can. So it's more about just making it ready and stable to do digitalisation. So I'll just quickly go through the sort of partnerships and the kind of models we have. So the British National Archive was quite a large project, which was we kind of then spoke to FindMy's past to kind of digitise 40 million pages of our newspaper collections. It's quite a massive undertaking at the time. So they built a very bespoke site to do this, and they have been busily going away digitising this content. The contract runs for around 10 years, and I suppose that's currently where they are. They're kind of ahead of the targets in terms of where we thought they would be, so we're quite pleased with that. But again, it's just to give you a sense of the scale and the kind of commitment from our point of view. The other project we're doing with FindMy Past was, in fact, an initiative which came from the library itself, because we realised that we had material in terms of the electoral rolls and the in the office material, which we kind of inherited from the Foreign Office, I suppose, many years ago, which kind of had a value to the Jiangxi market. So we, rather than them coming to us, we actually put out a tender, said like, we'd like to digitise this content, we can see it has value, and then we ran a tender process, and Farmer Pass was selected to do it. It covered two kind of scopes of material, which is the electoral rolls registers. These registers contain the people who were eligible to vote between 1832 and 1932. One of the issues we certainly knew we had with this in terms of challenges was electoral registers are quite messy. They don't. The format it does vary. And it would require a lot of work on the partner to kind of, if you like, tidy up and find a way to present this information. So you couldn't just do it from what I call a standard template. The other one was the Indios records, which to do with like birth, deaths, and marriages, and again held the treasure trove of kind of personal information, which again, in the current situation, before we had this made available online, people would have to come into the library to do the research, and it was, and from our point of view, it was quite a long, drawn-out process. They would have to call up the items and check, and they wouldn't be able to do any cross-referencing. So where what they can do now is that they can type in the name, just the name of the person they're interested in, and the system would run it and find any relevant people. So it was advantageous to do that. Another strategic partner we have is with Gale Cengage. The first big collection we did with them was we started with Echo, but Echo, which is 19th century collection online, was a very large project. It covered a multi-year publishing program from their point of view, where they would publish probably about 4 modules a year. And they approached us and said, look, you know, we are trying to basically capture the material which from this period, which was obviously a massive change in terms of society, in terms of just revolution and other things, and we'd like to be able to contribute to it. So on the basis of that, we kind of went into partnership with them. And the way it would normally work is that they would come with their themes for each module. They would then talk to our curators, who would give them our feedback, which is very much a two-way process. So they would say, we're interested in a particular theme, and we would say, yes, that's good, but actually this is probably more relevant based upon what your theme's about. And then what we would then do is we would streamline and come to a conclusion in terms of the material they wanted. And then, as Rich was sort of outlining, it would go through our sort of process where we would, kind of look at the content they're interested in. We would see if there's any copyright issues. Obviously, the stuff they tend to go for was kind of fairly straightforward. We said that in terms of rights clearance they would have to do, we would say they would have to do it in advance and contact the rights holders where they can find them. And that's generally the process that happens with all the commercial partners in this context. Early printed books is quite an unusual project here, because again it was to digitize 12,000 Arabic books using our kind of Ellis catalogue, which presents quite a few challenges for it. One of the key things that they wanted to do with this was to develop a Arabic OCR reader, which is unique. It didn't exist in the world when they attempted to do it, and they took the view that there was an example of developing these collections from a sort of non-English or European-speaking languages. So it was a way of kind of exploring different content. So they done the first launch of that in last December, and they are continuing to add more material to that particular module. Adam Matthews Digital, they again came to us to look at particularly the India office records, and they're interested in the East India Company. So we have a range of modules again with them over the next 2, 3 or 4 years. They are digitizing factory records initially, which I think they've just about finished, and they've got another series of other modules they're doing. So, for example, magazines in World War II, which is quite interesting in terms of treasure trove of information. So again, all these partnerships kind of, we've taken the view from our point of view as to say it gives us the ability to make sure that our content is made available. It provides us with a revenue stream, and it gives us the ability to have a carve out, in fact, which I should mention. We have in our agreement with them, we have a kind of a 30% carve out to reuse this for anything that they digitize for research, and so that it can go towards the bio labs and other projects to again encourage reuse. I suppose we briefly talk about the challenges. One of the challenges that became quite apparent at the beginning is kind of ensuring that the business partners and the scanning vendors that they choose have an understanding of the material that the BO holds, because sometimes the collections haven't been touched for a long, long time, and they may have a misunderstanding of what they think they're getting. And this is really important when it comes down to the practicalities of digitizing. So what we tend to do in the beginning is to do a kind of a survey of the material once they've selected what they're interested in. And we get conservation to do this, and that's evolved slightly because we would just do obviously a sample checking. When they look at, say, if there's 100 items, they'll just do a percentage sample of them. But what we found when they got it, because one of the commercial partners, obviously directives from our point of view, is that they have deadlines to meet. So if they're scanning items which actually are quite difficult because they've got tight bindings or there's extensive damage which would need repair, that's going to slow down the process. So what we said to them, it does help to kind of go up front to kind of look at these things and deal with them then. There has to be a balance, of course, between, I suppose, their business drivers versus our curatorial sort of view of the world. So from a BL perspective, we obviously would want to encourage them to digitize whole collections rather than parts. We would certainly, and we have and they would have a view in terms of how that information is then presented to the outside world, because obviously in partnership with any organisation which we're sharing our reputation in some respects, we want to ensure that they are doing what we want them to do. At the same time, we also have to deal with their kind of commercial drivers, which is, they're only going to digitize content which has value, or they can extract value from, and that's obviously going to limit some of the projects that they may approach. And sometimes there may be, I won't say conflict, but certainly a challenge of it. The other thing I'll say is, in terms of the internally, we have to kind of deal with is the impact on our rest of the organisation, because we appreciate the fact that lots of people in our organisation aren't also involved in our projects, but support it. So, if we have to get material all up from the basements and our storage areas, there's an associated potential cost to that. We try to run these projects as business as usual. However, there are times when the project might require additional resource, and if the department's concerned, say that they can't support it without additional finance, then we will probably go back to the partner and say, if you want this particular thing, this is how you do it. I think it's making sure that the digital asset that they deliver meets our requirements, because one of the things we also realise, although we have a contract and everything's specified within it, because it goes through a number of iterations from their point of view, they have lots of third parties involved in their workflows. We have to ensure that their partners deliver what we requested. So, for example, their final product will be an online web asset, which is available for their users. Whereas one of the digital assets that we would expect to receive is, as you said, either a JPEG 2000 or a TIFF file, which we will then convert. So making sure that meets our standards. The other challenge we sometimes get is trying to get the statistics out, because obviously they have a slightly different drivers in terms of what we're doing, and we will be focusing on making sure that we can report back as part of the project governance to say how they are getting on within the digitalisation of our collection. So we have a slightly different perspective on it than they do. But we do tend to try and finalise and standardise what we receive from them, so we can report back in a consistent way. But one of the things that we also have to acknowledge as well, that it's not managing a project in a way that will be done internally, because essentially they deliver the time scale, they deliver the output in terms of their platform. So we have less control. But what we will want to be controlling is ensuring that we can guarantee when this material will be available, and as a result of that, I guess we'll know when we're going to be expecting our revenue deliveries. And I suppose just finally wrapping up to say, yes, because they're not on site, then obviously we have to take a slightly proactive view into the managing issues which will occur on site, and that's part of what my role is about, which is essentially kind of relationship management. No, I think that's it from me. Is there any questions you'd like to ask us? That'd be great. Yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, the Arabic OCR, but that wasn't done with the Qatar National Library. I think this was done, Pascal. This was done with Gail Cengage. So they have worked with a number of companies. I think they're based in Egypt initially to work out the technology to kind of deliver the OCR. And I think what they said from the last time I heard was it was at least 90% accurate in terms of recognition, character recognition, which is quite amazing given the fact that that's probably very comparable to, certainly comparable to English. And what the website does, and I've included links on all of my slides to their site, what that allows them to do is that in terms of the website, they can actually switch from Arabic, you can search in Arabic, you can search in English, and they can provide answers in back and forth in terms of both. But it's a very unique product. I suppose in terms of reducing the business, PPI context, anyone has experience in a business mode to reduce the digitalization workflow cost. I guess, again, one of the things we probably would say is partly about standardization. So you need to have a defined workflow process, and everybody has an understanding of what the kind of regular components of it are. Because if you can then say, for example, this is how you're going to approach it, you can certainly work out the cheapest way, and most effective way of doing it. And certainly try to, I won't say get economies of scale, but what I'm sort of meaning is that, for example, if there are opportunities to deliver additional benefits on top of the digitalization project, so for example, when we do when we get conservation, for example, to do a survey of the material, and then they discover in there that there is X amount of material which needs particular work. We've now identified it, which means it's easy for us to deal with it in the future. So and the other thing we hope to try and do is that when we get the digital assets back, that we kind of make people aware of it, so we don't keep re-digitalizing the same content over and over again. So I suppose there's some ways a way to do that. Yeah, I'm going to pass over to Rositza.
Hello, I can see a question from Pascal again about, or at least popped out on the other screen I was using, about how many images will be migrated to the FFF compliant viewer over the next 3 years. So I'm not sure so much about the number of images, but I think it's something in the region of 300 to 500 terabytes worth of data. That we've got from what we call legacy digitization projects, and is currently viewable on other platforms. And of course, we've got much more than that in terms of how much we've digitized over the years because of the commercial digitization partnerships, because currently the content is accessible elsewhere and will still need to be made available on our own platform after the end of a license, or whenever that may be in the next few years. So I can't see any more questions. Sorry, I can see another one. Could you say more about the workflow orchestration tool you would be looking at? To be honest, I can't say very much more. We currently we've issued an invitation to tender. I'm not sure whether Neil knows more about that. Yeah, it's just a business planning management tool that we are tendering for at the moment. And another question from Neil. How do you follow up at the moment? Do I understand correctly this is in terms of how do we manage, coordinate the digitization at the moment? If that's the question, yes. With difficulty, we've got project-based management documentation, we've got some management information, when the material gets to the into the ingest process, which still needs a lot of work on. We have lots of spreadsheets and lots of XML documents, planning productivity in the studio, planning conservation support, planning targets. Oh yes, and we within our team we maintain the digital asset register, which is a tool we use within our team to record new projects, delivery outputs, planned targets, delivery output targets, as well as to record where the digital asset is stored, either on server storage or within the digital library system if it has been ingested. So a combination of things, but yes, with the current program to develop the infrastructure to introduce the business orchestration, the workflow orchestration tool, this will improve. And also we will be tendering next year for a new digital asset management system, since we think there's the market is quite mature for that, and we will be looking outside for that. There's two of us here, as well as Neil Fitzgerald, who is our head of digital research, attending. If you've got other questions, we can address in the next 5 minutes or so. Otherwise, we'll be very grateful for your feedback. We'll be grateful to learn from you about how you deal with some of the common challenges we have in terms of data quality, OCR quality, layout recognition. We have digitized over the years a lot of printed texts, including our newspapers digitization program, and the feedback from users and researchers is that they would like better quality of OCR, and so we are looking at trying to analyze what the benefits would be if we could OCR the collections, how we should do that. So this is one of our current challenges. I've obviously mentioned the data.bl.uk, which we would like to, the site is a beta, we would like to develop that, so we would like to encourage everyone to have a look, download data, or kind of let us know if researchers want to use it and in what ways they want to use it, so that we can develop our services. We would be open to new collaborative projects to address common challenges, especially if there's identified funding for that. And of course, you can follow up on the slides, links on the slides. There's a link on the last slide to our web page for digital scholarship, which highlights a lot of the data sets we've got, and we've got a blog where we share information about initiatives, projects, activities within the team. Well, thank you very much for listening and for your comments.
Okay, that's been of interest to you all, and we also look forward to your feedback, and we'll have to do these in future. So obviously, anything that you would like us to pick up in terms of things would be grateful for your feedback about that. Okay, thank you again. Bye, everybody.